Length of time versus significance. So I was looking through, our previous travel because I was going to apply for a visa for my wife for Japan. And it asks you to list all times you've been to Japan. And I was looking through the dates and I was like, this is very strange. Like 1 day here, 2 days there. Oh, there's a longer period of time. 4 days? That was our trip to Hokkaido when we drove around. 4 days? I mean, we did so much stuff, right? We went to see the lavender fields. We went to this little hotel by a river. We had frozen grapes in their buffet. Another time in Japan, we went to the coast, and over there we had a nice meal at an onsen with the dancing abalone. Is where the abalone is live when they put it on the flame and it dances, it moves. It's really, really tender. And then even in Kobe, we went to have Kobe beef. We had lots of great experiences there. I saw a lot of people fishing. I didn't know that so many Japanese people are into fishing. And I was like 2 days there. And I realized we actually haven't spent a lot of time in Japan. Well, we haven't spent a lot of days in Japan. The number of days is small, but the memories from Japan are enormous. And somehow those do not correlate. You would think that we have spent months in Japan by the amount of memories we have, right? I mean, I proposed to her in Kyoto. I thought it was a little bit rushed, but I didn't realize it's just 2 or 3 days. I mean, yeah, we had a nice time walking in countryside. We even had time to explore different restaurants, wander and see a fruit vendor and buy fruits. In Tokyo, we also bought fruit too. Stay at the Park Hyatt Tokyo in a suite. I think all these things, right? And you realize, I think we stayed at the Andaz as well. I mean, how much time do you have to do all these things? How is it that we're able to do all these things in just 1, 2 days here, 1, 2 days there, 4 days there, right? It really is amazing when you think about how we lose track of how much time we spent in this or that, right? If something was very painful, we think, oh, that lasted forever. It could have been like 15 minutes. But you think it was hours of pain and torture, right? Like, Will Smith on Freshman's, listening to the people, the kids playing violin. Oh, when will this end, right? And it's actually only an hour. But that's the thing about time. We really have a poor concept of time. And so we think that a longer trip is going to be a better trip, right? I mean, if 2 days in Hawaii is good and 5 days would be better, and a month, wow, that would be paradise. But I think those of us who have traveled a long time, we realize when you're there for a month, it actually gets quite boring and your appreciation actually starts going down. And actually, somebody's looked into this. Daniel Kahneman, probably with Amos Tversky. But if you look at people and the way they view an experience, right, they really can't quantify the amount of time and experience. All I can remember is the average enjoyment experience and the end. And guess what? They just average those two numbers and there you go. That's how much they like to experience. So what he's saying is you could have been on Hawaii for 5 days, right? You had a decent time for your 5 days. And then at the last day, you really had a blast. So average score of 7 and last day of 10, well, that's like 8, 9, right? Wonderful time. Whereas somebody else had a wonderful time in Hawaii, right? For 15 days, they had a 9, right? Absolutely marvelous, mind-blowing, beautiful time. And the weather was great. They didn't get a monsoon, right? I mean, there were no fires, smoke in the air. Everybody was friendly. And then the last day, they had some issues with the hotel, had some bad food, vomited. They give it a 5. Their score is 9 plus 5 divided 2. 7. Worse than yours. Even though objectively you had a less amount of a good time, right? They have 15 days of good time, one of a bad, right? You had 5 days of good time, one of really good, but that's still not the same as 15. It's just incomparable, right? He continues this idea, looking at life, right? And this is where I think it's tricky because this is how we value our time in the past. But when you say how we value life, right, you're talking about us after we're dead, at the end of our life, which I feel is a very different thing than the way we are right now, right? But the thing he's saying is, if you think about Mary, she had a wonderful life until the age of 45 when she developed breast cancer. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't as good. She had some complications with her chemo, and then she passed away 10 years later at the age of 55. Then you have John, right? John had a wonderful life. He had a just beautiful, wonderful life. At the peak of his life, 35, he was hiking with friends and there was a freak accident and he died. Who had a better life? And so, if you lose his formula, then obviously John did. Because who cares about duration? But if you just think about it, we think duration does matter, right? And so we use duration in many things, right? We talk about marriage, right? Oh, you've been married for 35 years. Oh, that's great, right? Oh, duration, how old are your kids, right? Oh, wow, they're grown up now, right? Or you've known this friend. Yeah, we're childhood friends, and say you're middle age 50, right? You've known each other for 40 years. That really means a lot, right? But think about it. Your childhood friend who you see maybe once every 5 years. You spent a lot of time as a kid, but recently you haven't spent much time together. How close are you, right? Versus, say, a friend you didn't know as a kid, but now you see every week. Does it make a difference that you spend more time with this person? How do we view time? Because I can tell you from personal experience that when I think about time and spending time with patients, right, if I were to consciously think about it or advise people or coach people, if you spend 5 minutes with a patient in the morning and 5 minutes in the afternoon, they'll think you spent more time with them than if you spent half an hour at one time in the morning. It just works that way, right? If I spent 5 months with a patient yesterday, right? And then I don't see them anymore, and next morning, so I was thinking about you last night, talked to my friend who's, a specialist in this field, and he was saying this is, so yeah, I think this might be something related to your issue. So think about it. You telling them you spent time talking about them with a friend, right? How much time did you spend? 5 minutes at max. All of a sudden, the 5 minutes you spent yesterday balloons to an hour, right? I mean, maybe add another 5 minutes, double it, right? That may be reasonable, but they're gonna feel like you spent 1 hour talking to them, working with them, conversing, discussing your issue, listening to them, right? Which is, I think, simply not objectively correct. But that's the thing, we're very poor judges of what time, how much time, right? And that goes back to the idea, wow, we had so many good experiences in Japan. And yet we haven't even spent more than like a week or two over 2 years. How does that work? We feel we've been there like a week there, a week here. So many memories. Too many to really list even. And that's the cool, interesting thing about how our brain works. How we view time. How we don't view time. How experiences transcend the amount of time spent on them. How takeaway, right? Emotions and feelings don't have that much to do with how much time was spent in an event with this person at this place. But our emotions transcend. It's like poetry. Just because there's few words doesn't mean they're not any less poignant, touching, moving, life-giving.